Just for folks who haven't met us before, I'm Joe McManus. People want to go around and introduce themselves?
I'll start. I'm Kyle Fazzari, also at Canonical. Joe's my boss.
So, Sid Faber, also with Canonical and new add to Joe's team.
I'm Jeremy Deret, also known as Artivis. I'm working at Canonical with Kyle and Joe, Sid.
And Jeremy introduced himself. So who just joined us? Who dialed in?
Hi there. This is Victor from Alias Robotics. Hi, everyone.
Hey, Victor. Cool.
Hi.
And Ruffin.
Hey, I'm Ruffin. I'm from UC San Diego.
Thanks for joining us today. So, we had two main topics for the agenda this month. The first one was desires for security tooling in ROS 2. So is there certain things we need to have? I guess we could approach this from two things. I think the question was actually about things like, should we have an automated scanning infrastructure before things get, I'll say, incorporated in to sort of meet a minimum number of requirements? Or should we build a place that's accessible for everybody? Like if you've used Coverity, they've got a public free way to scan your code. Should we, as long as it's open source, they're cool with anybody using that. Is that something we should recommend for ROS 2 projects? Any thoughts on that? Or do you recommend like an open VAS configuration? So if you've used like OpenVAS, we can say, hey, this is a profile you should use against a piece of software.
I think that latter is particularly interesting. I'm also interested in monitoring tools, right? And this is something we've sort of talked about internally, where there's no way right now to know that your ROS 2 software is misbehaving security-wise, other than it just not working. But there's no way to also see if it has been compromised in some way, because there's really no logging from the DDS side. No implementations have any logging plugins implemented, and so that is something I'm particularly interested in looking at this cycle.
Yeah, situational awareness is super important. So anything we do to raise, maybe we can make a recommendation for what things should have. They should all log the syslog. Somebody else was talking before I cut people off though, so I'll stop. Maybe not. Sid, you had some ideas about using the common event format.
Yeah, so I was looking at some of the ideas. I think if it makes sense, it seems like syslog is pretty standard, as far as event logging. It's something that can be consumed by just about anything downstream. And it seems like from a security standpoint that CEF, the common event format, is pretty much the standard. The only challenge is, I guess, I can't figure out whether it's a like how open it actually is as a standard. I know it was what's that? ArcSight was kind of the big proponent of it, and all the main documentation is there. So, and it's called an open standard, but I don't know. How widely it's pretty widely adopted. So that's kind of the big thing, big thought.
Maybe we can just check to see if it's GPL'd or something like that. And if it is, then we can, or at least the documentation is GPL, because we wouldn't want to start adopting something that later you have to pay to find the PDF to adhere to. And
the idea, sorry, Joe and I are sitting next to each other. There we go.
I did mute.
Okay, now we're good. So the idea with this is everything that coming up with a standard way for all components to log, and so we can extract it with some other tool. Is that the idea?
Yeah. So something like maybe if people want to integrate this into their SIM or their Elk Stack or Splunk, this be a way to know we need to know we need a communication path for the things in the field to report any anomalous behavior too. Actually, not even anomalous, just regular behavior, because you don't know what's wrong unless you're looking at it. So now that there was what was it, like maybe 6 months ago, there was the construction crane that was found to be on the public internet, and people were able to drive it around. Well, if you saw a connection in at 2 a.m, but your crew works 9 to 5, well, then something's wrong, right? And so you wouldn't be able to detect things like that. So maybe if we start off with making a recommendation that programs enable syslog functionality. So if they're written in Python, you can just import logging, etc. I mean, there's basically a really easy ways to do this.
Is that if we did a DDS plugin for logging? Is that a format we would use there as well?
I think that's exactly what we want to use.
Ruffin, do you know anything? Have you dug into that low level of detail with DDS implementations?
The last time I looked at DDS logging was maybe about 6 months ago. And I was just rereading the spec. I remember when I was profiling all of the DDS topic space and requirements for security policies that RTI Connects does have reserved topic spaces for disseminating DDS logging. So like so you guys are talking about logging for like anomaly detection or intrusion detection. One of the use cases I was seeing logs like more immediately beneficial is like for auditing your system. So rather than let's say having to run your entire system and then capture all of the discovery traffic to consolidate, what is the minimum failing policy that your system requires to function, we could just as well have every node kind of record itself on like who it's interacting with and who it connected with. So you could just record a single DDS logging topic that all the nodes would publish to, and then that would self-report, what connection requirements, and then that would be your avenue of auto-generating security policies. So that's why I looked into half a year ago, and like I said, it like you said, Kyle, it's kind of hard because there's no other DDS implementation that necessarily implements that 4th and 5th optional feature in the secure DDS OMG spec. And I'm not sure how that's changed since it's like the last 6 months.
Yeah, I don't think it has, but it'll be interesting to look into.
I like that because it's sort of I don't think logging is necessarily just for security. So this is a really good approach, Ruffin. If you could have everything logging to itself, you could mine those logs if you need to go back and look at something new connect, etc. But it's just the more the more information you have, the better for security, but also better for just setting up your systems and troubleshooting. So and then building the security policies, as you said. So that's really cool. Okay.
On a tangent on data logging, so I don't know if you guys were at ROSCON, but Gianluca and I gave a talk on event data recorders for autonomous vehicles and robots. So the case where you want to retain some immutability. You might want to check that out as a potential use case of like, how event data recorders might be useful for digital forensic investigations and how that's valuable.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I think the presentations were posted online, so I'll go take a look at it.
I think it's going to be a couple of weeks yet, but yeah, we'll definitely take a look. Some of us were there, but they also went to ROS, so I haven't actually talked to Jeremy until right now.
Cool. Okay, I think unless anybody else wants to talk about logging, move on to the second topic for today. Actually, let's. There's a third topic too. But the second topic for today is the vulnerability disclosure method. So, there was some talk in the forums about how people should report security issues against ROS, and so there's a few things we should talk about here. So, what is the best method for communication? I'll just speak from what we've done here at Canonical. You know, we've been working with security disclosures and embargoed discussions for 15 years. So, well, and I think it's been working pretty well. It's sort of an industry standard. So most people submit their communication via an encrypted email to, like, let's say disclosures at openrobotics.org or something like that. And we publish some GPG keys that can be read. Sort of a newer trend is to use Keybase. So Keybase is just an app you can put on your phone or your laptop and use that. It's a little bit easier to set up than GPG keys. The only problem is then you're sort of, we're all sort of monitoring an app on our phone. I think most people here are used to monitoring their email a little closer, but they're both possible methods. One thing we've had to do with some folks is just do both. Maybe they report the issue as I found something with an unencrypted email, and then we move it over to Keybase. That's kind of convoluted, but some people really like to do that. My recommendation would be to use, we publish GPG keys on the wiki or on some web page, and people use that for communication.
Quick question. Actually, two. First of all, is Keybase really only a mobile app? It doesn't have.
No, there is a web UI you can use. It's okay.
Okay. Second question. GPG is typically like one person owns a key, right? How does it work if I want to email I'm assuming this is going to be an alias that actually ends up going to multiple people.
Yeah.
Are we sharing a key with all of those people?
No, that's a really big, yes, that's not the right thing to do.
Right, exactly. So how does this work?
Yeah, so what we do at Canonical is we publish the keys for the people who should get emails. And when you send an email, let's say the standard now, let's be honest, it's just Gmail. Gmail, you can just send encrypted email to multiple recipients just by importing their keys. It's very simple to do. There's even a plugin called FlowCrypt, makes it so you don't even know you're really importing keys. It's very easy to use. And that's for things that are sensitive and you want to worry about, 0 days, etc. This is a great way to communicate prior to disclosure. So if you think of the term most people use is the CRD, the coordinated disclosure date. So coordinated release date, I'm sorry. So for the coordinated release date, we want to make sure we can all communicate internally, get things updated, and then go public with it. And you don't want that to leak ahead of time. You also want to make sure you have the ability when someone last minute says, everything we did broke, you need to give us an extra week. And if you're, and that's just I think an easier thing to happen on an encrypted email. It could happen on public email too, but when you have to worry about things that shouldn't in 0 days are bad for everybody. So I'd definitely recommend we use email. Anybody have strong opinions on that?
I think that's the lowest barrier to entry technology-wise, but that's kind of ignoring the encryption aspect. Does it make sense to consider just an HTTPS web form? That gives us a couple of advantages, right? It's encrypted, at least on the front end. We'd have to talk about how that's actually disseminated. But second of all, we can also force reports to follow a format instead of just getting, I'm assuming, I'm not a security expert, but I'm assuming any sort of report is going to look totally different if all you do is give them an email address. They're all going to include different information, right? But with a form, we can actually sort of enforce a bit of a format.
I love the idea of the form. We could even do something with the form where we give them the option to either communicate to follow up with us by providing their Keybase ID or their GPG key, and then we can have an easy wiki button to go to Open Robotics and figure out, or sort of the ROS.org and figure out how to respond with either of those. And that could be a way we communicate. And also we could look at it and decide, you know what, this isn't actually serious. This is working as designed, and we can quickly close down. That'll add some. We can have, with that form, you might even be able to have it. You could go as fancy or as lightweight as you want. It could open tickets automatically in a Trello board. There's that sort of API integration. And so people could be watching it I mean, that's all over HTTPS. You do have to see who you share, invite members to that board with and everything. But that would be a neat way to do it and keep track of things and allow visibility across multiple organizations. Otherwise, does the forum go to just a Google Doc, which is how I think what most of the forums go to. But yeah.
Yeah, I think there are a number of ways to tackle the back end, but I think either way I think I like this the best. I also think it's the most work to actually set up. We need to talk to Open Robotics about actually doing this, but we can maybe come up with a number of recommendations and see what they're willing to do.
Cool, I like that. Let's so let's say in an order, if anybody, unless somebody objects, let's say a priority order will investigate doing a web form, and then following that, we'll move to email if the web form is impossible. Anybody?
So I've got a few questions, guys. This is Victor from Alias. So we've been actually exploring this exact path for quite a while, with a number of manufacturers privately reporting in private web forums and so on. So I do support using email. I think that's kind of like real standard, and we should go that path. For the form, I'd like to at least hear what do you guys have in mind in terms of who will get access to this information when reported to the forum? Meaning, is the security working group going to be somehow aware of the reports, or is it just going to be open robotics? Are we going to restrict the reports within the forum only to ROS or ROS2, or are we also going to open it up for other technologies? I think it's very important we somehow define some initial points about this.
First of all, Victor, I said web form, not like discourse. Is that?
I got it.
Okay, very good. I thought you were saying forum. Very good. I think the question is the same regardless of whether it's an email or the form, right? It's going to have to go to multiple people. We haven't discussed exactly who that would be. I'm operating under the assumption it would be a combination of people from Open Robotics and this working group. But I think ultimately that decision is left up to Brian.
All right, and regarding the second point, which is what exactly are we aiming for? Are we aiming for ROS and ROS2 solely, or any other related robot vulnerability? Meaning, what's the exact coverage we're aiming for? Only the base ROS packages, or any ROS package that anyone can just put together?
I would say that we go with ROS2, although this is the ROS2 security working group, so we'll have to reach out and make sure they want to go the same direction. I imagine they would. And anything basically that you can install via the standard methods, right? If it's just pulling a random package out of GitHub, well, maybe we'll help with that, but we might just ask you to go upstream. If you can install it via this, the standard ROS methodology, then it falls under this umbrella.
Okay.
Cool. And then, okay, so we'll take we'll try to, as we come up with things, we'll try to make sure the process is documented. As you said, I think it's important people who are members of this working group are on the pre-disclosure list. We'd have to set some boundaries for how you can join. Just because you send an email doesn't mean you can be a member. I'd say we take some examples from like if anybody's seen the distros list for security disclosures, they sort of require you to be a contributor in some way, shape, or form, whether that's responding to emails or verifying that, at least verifying some of the reports are real. I guess I would say we take that approach. So if you want to be a member, you need to be active, not just joining to get notification. And I think that's fairly easy to defend as a position.
And I think establishing the disclosure method is only one piece of a larger puzzle that we need to talk about much more, right? Which is an actual disclosure policy, how we handle these disclosures, what we do internally, deadlines, all that stuff we need to talk about further. But I think what we really wanted to accomplish today was the ability to make a recommendation back to Open Robotics about what infrastructure we suggest they set up for handling this type of thing, and then once we have that, we can talk about actually coming up with a policy. Actually, coming back to methods real quick, I read a CERT guide for yeah, and let's see, is this link? Let me share. So Carnegie Mellon CERT put out this recommendation, and they had a nice let's see, section 4.2 talks about like some assumption that some things they've gone through, some assumptions they've made in the past that didn't actually bear out in the end. And one of them was that actually they went to web form at first as well. And one of the things they realized was that not everyone wants to fill out a web form. And so like we should actually have multiple methods, and email was the one that they suggested. So I do think that a web form is number one and an email is number two, but I think we actually need both. What do you guys think?
I can't hear you else answering, so I'm just gonna
Yeah,
go forward. I think you do need, trying to force people to use one thing is really difficult. I think having two recommended methods that ideally would go to the same place, like an email would automatically open a card in Trello or something, or it goes to a group of people on this call and we gotta track it somehow. That's fine. I think you will have people who won't want to use a form, and you'll have people who just cannot figure out how to import a GPG key either. So, yeah, so that's a good compromise.
And I think it's you made a good point there, where regardless of the method that we come up with, if we have multiple, right, they should all end up in the same place.
Mm-hmm. Robin, you were saying something?
Yeah, I was just going to agree and concur that having both, the classic security at email address or whatnot, and then the web form, this are two good avenues.
Cool. And okay, so we've been keeping, and for folks who might have dialed in late, we're keeping track of this in that shared Google Doc. But what we've decided to do is after every meeting, we're just moving everything over to the ROS wiki. That way, there's just a area where we can track things long term. That's not a out of control Google Doc. So at the end of this meeting, we'll move all these notes and action items over there, and then sort of reset this doc as a place to keep agenda items for each month. Speaking of that, next month, we ideally want to do these the last Tuesday of every month, but that would be when a lot of folks are out of the office for their end of year holidays and business shutting down. So I think we'll probably try to do it maybe the same day next month. I'll put a post out on the forum and we'll do it at the same time, just so a lot of people on vacation.
And we'll skip the one, what is it, next week or something?
Yeah.
Okay. So we'll reflect that in the calendar.
Well, your mic picked up my while mine was muted. You should just use your headphones for this whole call.
Can you guys hear me as I talk?
So can you grab that? You were the one who moved all the previous documentation over. Actually, maybe we'll just put that in the.
We'll make a.
Yeah. Okay. So with that, there's just a few minutes left for today's call. Anything we need to cover, or if you want to throw new items for the next agenda, that's cool. I will take your silence as nobody wants to do anything. So, okay, everybody, thank you very much for joining in. Have a great rest of the day.
Wait, Ruffin was saying something.
Oh, darn it. Hey, Ruffin, sorry.
Do we have a more ideas on how we want to proceed with the node IDL?
We do actually. Okay. All right. There we go. I'll just talk through Joe's mic. we do, Ruthin. That's a good question, and that is something that I intend on having the next month. It wasn't something that I was able to flesh out enough to talk about decently today, but next time around, yeah, definitely.
Okay, looking forward to it.
Yeah, it's on our it is on our committed actions for this next cycle here at Canonical. So we've got the number of engineers are going to work on it. Yay, resources. Okay, well, awesome, everybody. Thanks for dialing in, and we'll talk to you next month. If you have stuff you want to talk about in between, remember, just hit the discourse or send us on email. Bye, everybody.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks. Bye.
All right, thank you.